Please welcome General Manager WKYU-TV and WKYU-FM, Western Kentucky University, and Chairman, Board of Directors, KBA, David Brinkley.
Hey, everybody. Hey, I'm really excited. Today's keynote speaker, I'm reading off the prompter, so y'all excuse me for that. Had an 18-year Major League Baseball career that included 2 World Championship titles, a Rookie of the Year title, Silver Slugger Award. I wanted to say Silver Circle for my Emmy friends. Silver Slugger Award, and he is also a 5-time All-Star. He's now an executive business and life coach and author of the best-selling motivational book, Shift, Change Your Mind and You Can Change Your World, which we have for sale back here in the exhibitor area. Also, one other thing, he was on an episode of The Simpsons where he played himself. So, ladies and gentlemen, Sirius Radio MLB.com broadcaster Steve Sax. Good to see you, buddy.
How's everybody doing today? Good, good. Great to be with you. Great to be with you. First time in this part of the country, I can tell you. I've been in a lot of places in the U.S., but first time in this part of the country, I met some of the nicest people. So I want to thank you for having me here today. You know, when I got here, I thought this was going to be the triangle of confusion, because my agent tells me, he says, yeah, you're going to be speaking to the Kentucky Broadcasters Association. I said, great, where in Kentucky do I fly in? She said, you don't, you fly into Ohio. I said, okay, where in Ohio is the speech? She said, it's not, it's Indiana. So, you know, okay, whatever. Where's Mike Tarter? Mike Tarter, where are you, Mike? There, Mike, stand up a second, would you? What a nice man. You guys know Mike Tarter? Right there, yeah. Met him yesterday for about 25 seconds. That was about it. Thought I'd introduce him to you guys, you know what I mean? So there he is. He also said since he was felt so much benevolence towards everybody that he was going to take up and pay for everybody's golf fees. So you guys can just send him over to his room if you guys are playing golf. Mike will take care of that, no problem. So anyway, I want to talk a few things in my presentation today. By the way, did you guys get your baseballs? You did? Great. Okay, I knew this was going to be, oh, my pleasure. No. I got into the room and there was 300 baseballs in there. I said, man, the work should start right now. I got to sign all these baseballs. So I just wanted to tell you, by signing those baseballs, folks, just remember that right now they're not worth much, but 5 years from now they're going to be worth a lot less. So hope you have fun with those. But in my presentation today, there's a few things I want to go over. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of obstacles we need to overcome in the workplace and sometimes in our lives as well. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, the fear of failure is something that really does paralyze people in the workspace. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I had to deal with that actually in my career. Secondly, I want to talk about passion. And that really is the underpinnings of everything that's good, I think, in work or in our lives as well. And, you know, I want to ask you guys out there, can you really surrender to an emotional commitment? And I don't mean in the personal sense, you guys, so you don't have to faint or anything. But it is a very important thing to be able to surrender to something that we're going to be doing in the workplace. So I'm going to talk about that as well. And also the importance of change and diversity. And there's a lot of great minds out there that sometimes we overlook. But there's a lot of great minds that are of the young people. And I think these young people need to be attention paid to them because they've got some good things to offer. It's like what's in your minor league system, and also mentoring. How is it with mentoring in your particular companies? Because I have a mentoring story that I want to share with you that made a profound effect on me when I was a young kid. So that's kind of the areas I want to cover in my presentation today. I want to thank you for having me here. If you want to reach me, you can get me right there at stevesaxspeaks.com. If you want to reach me as a certified ICF coach, you can reach me right there at stevesaxcoaches.com. So that's it for the commercials. And I'll tell you what, why don't we just make it nice and easy today? Let's just have a conversation, folks, okay? I'll tell you what. I'll start the conversation. So I would like to familiarize you a little bit with some of my background. And that is that I grew up in Northern California. I grew up on a farm just outside of Sacramento. Now, growing up there, it was a great thing because there was a thread that really ran through the communities in which I lived, and that was the thread of baseball. Everybody was huge baseball enthusiasts where I grew up. And really, if you look at how California is structured, Fresno is called what I like to call the line of indoctrination, okay? Because if you grow up north of Fresno, of course, you're a San Francisco Giants fan, And if you go up south of Fresno, of course, you like the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, growing up in Northern California, who likes the Dodgers over here? Oh, one person in the whole crowd. All right. How about that? So that's kind of the structure in California. It's like, it's black or white. There's no in between. My family was that I have 4 siblings, 1 brother and 3 sisters. We're still all very close today. And they felt the same way. My brother and I always wanted to be Major League Baseball players when we were growing up. And through the grace of God and a lot of hard work, my brother and I got to play Little League Baseball, high school baseball, American Legion, Babe Ruth, minor league baseball, and the big leagues on the same team in our lives. So we were really fortunate to be able to stay together and play baseball, for the most part of our lives. So this whole thing about the Giant-Dodger rivalry, you know that this is a real thing, right? So I can remember watching the game of the week with my dad and my brother, sitting there and viewing the Dodgers and Giants going at it. And I can remember telling my dad, I said, you know what, Dad? If those LA Dodgers ever drafted me, I wouldn't play for the Dodgers for $1 million. That was Stephen Sachs, circa 1968, at about the age of 8 years old. And then 10 years later, when the Dodgers drafted me out of high school, it took $985,000 less for me to sign with the LA Dodgers. Yeah, you see, I was a busboy at a restaurant and making no money, and I suddenly became the richest person in my family by far. Yeah, that 15 grand after Uncle Sam took his half, and I bought myself a used Cutlass Supreme, man. That was it. I had no money left. I was back to becoming a poor baseball player. Now, you see the guys on TV, they're stacked. They got lots of dough. These guys on the major league teams, they got a lot of money. But the guys in the minor leagues, they don't have anything. They're poor. They're hitchhikers. I was one of these guys walking around for many years with a hole in my tooth because I couldn't afford a root canal. I had to pull my tooth out. No health insurance. When I was in the big leagues at 21 years old, there's a picture of me on a bubblegum card with braces on my teeth because I finally got some health insurance to cover it. So that's kind of what it was like for young baseball players. But instead of going through all that stuff and saying what it was like and what I don't want to talk about my career that much, I don't like to do that. I want to give you one day in the life of a baseball player, and I want to share with you because there's some similarities to what I did and I'm sure what you're going through in your particular business. I want to share with you the reason why I was fortunate to make it, and I played for 17 years in altogether, big leagues and minor leagues. I want to share with you one day in the life of a baseball player and why I was fortunate to do it, and other guys weren't because I played against a lot of guys that had more talent than I did. There's no question about that. So here, if we can go back to 1979, 1980, we're going to go back to the Arizona Instructional League. Now, the Instructional League is where they take the cream of the crop of the young players and they put them on the fast track. They take them there after their minor league season's over. It's in late August. And they take them down there for a couple of months in Arizona and try to put them on that fast road to the big league. So it's an honor to be asked to go down to Arizona Instructional League. So I'm down there in Arizona. This is the schedule. 9 o'clock practice starts. At 12 o'clock, you break for lunch. At 1 o'clock, you play a game against the other teams that are down there. And then at 4 o'clock, disbursement. Everybody takes off and they leave. Now, this is what I did. So I had no money and no car because that was up in Sacramento. So I lived in a hovel, and this isn't a sob story, but I lived in a hovel on Grand Avenue in Phoenix. And I used to walk all the way to Mesa. If you've been in Arizona, you know the distances there. I'd walk all the way to Mesa where we practice every morning, okay? So I would get up about 6 a.m., 5:45 maybe, and I'd walk to Mesa, and I'd get there at about 7:15. And then I found out that the grounds crew, you know, the chaps that fix the field up and get it ready for the day, those guys had food in the morning. They had breakfast. And since I didn't have any money, I did a bartering system with these guys. I said, hey, look, you give me Captain Crunch, and I give you baseballs. And they thought, right on, that's a good trade. So I was bartering with these guys breakfast for baseball equipment. And so I would eat breakfast with these guys, and then our hitting coach, Leo Posada, would come in at 7:30. And I would hit in the cages with Leo Posada from 7:30 to 8:30. Has anybody ever hit in a batting cage for 5 minutes in here? Anybody? Yeah. You know what that does to your hands, right? It rips them up pretty good. So after an hour's working with Leo every day till 8:30, I'd come out of there with bloody hands, blisters, whatever. And I'd learn more about hitting with Leo Posada than I did in my whole career in baseball. About that time, people started to filter in, and the regular practice, people were getting ready for that. That started at 9 o'clock. So I changed the uniform, and I'd be with the team the rest of the day. And at 4 o'clock, when the final game was over, everybody would leave. But I would stay. And because I'd never played second base before, I would work with Chico Fernandez, who was the defensive specialist. And I would work with Chico from 4:30 to 6:30 every day. And then I'd walk back home. I'd get home after I took a shower at the park, and I'd get home about 8:30, and I'd have a glass of orange juice and a bologna sandwich for dinner, and then I'd go to bed. And I'd do the same thing the very next day. Every single day, without fail, with no guarantees somebody's going to come up to me and say, hey, you're going to make another, you're going to make a lot more money this. With no guarantees somebody's going to say you're going to be elevated to the next level, and certainly with not a guarantee at all that somebody's going to come up to me and say, here's your release, you're going home. It didn't work out. The only reason I did this, folks, is because I wasn't that good. And I had to do something different that other players were not willing to do. And that's the only reason I did it. There was nothing special about me at all. I just had a big heart, and I wanted to do it. And I had to do it the very simple way without cutting any corners. So that's the way it turned out for me. And along with those lines, I had people that helped me along the way, of course, but I want to talk to you about mentoring for a second. When I got up to the big leagues, and I was 21 years old when I got there, and I was scared to death, believe me. I was scared to death, but being on a veteran-based team with the Dodgers, it was a great thing because they helped me a lot. And I can remember back in '81, in September 27th, I'll never forget the day, I was called into a game, late in the game, and we were on our way to the playoffs and World Series, which I got to experience later that year. Davey Lopes got kicked out of a game, so there I was in Houston Astrodome against the Houston Astros. Now, Don Sutton, who's a Hall of Fame pitcher, you guys know Don Sutton, he was pitching on this particular day, and he was also throwing a shutout, which would have been a major league record, 56 career shutouts for Don Sutton. And I got called in this game, and it happened to be the day after Nolan Ryan, also of the Astros, just threw a no-hitter against the Dodgers, and I wasn't playing that day. So the next day I get called in, because Lopes got kicked out. There's 2 outs in the 9th inning, and they want me to hit against Don Sutton. So I'm up against Don Sutton. He needs one more out, and the game's over, and the 56 career shutout is intact, and he's got the record. And all I can remember is saying, don't strike out. Just don't strike out whatever you do. And you remember the Astrodome, that scoreboard with like ding, 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 ding? Remember that thing? It looked like a pinball machine. In the Astrodome, that thing was going crazy all the time, and there was 50,000 people there saying, strike him out, strike him out. And I'm saying, no, you're not, no, you're not. I didn't want to strike out. And the only thing I can remember is I tried to slow it down and just see the ball out of Don Sutton's hand, just see it for sure, and I just did want to make contact. I didn't care if I popped it up or hit a ground ball, just contact. So I just eliminated everything else from my head, and so the pitch came in, it was almost in slow motion, and I can remember making contact on the ball, and I was so intent on seeing the ball that my helmet came down in front of my eyes, and I didn't even see where it went. But I knew I hit the ball pretty hard because I felt it in my hands. So I started just running towards first base, like, taking off. And I could just remember our first base coach, Manny Mota, saying, slow down, it's a home run. And I went, what? A home run off of Don Sutton? Oh my God, he's my dad's age. I can't believe this. And I couldn't believe it. So I got around. I got hit home plate. I got in the dugout, and I was like, oh my God, I hit a home run off Don Sutton. Ooh, I got to call home. I can't believe I did this. So I'm like in the dugout, and they get the next out real quick, so the game's over. Well, and I had to temper my enthusiasm because we lost the game, but God, I hit a home run. It's pretty cool. And I get in the dugout, and I can remember getting my stuff together. Pretty soon, there's a tap on my shoulder. And I looked, and it's Don Sutton, the guy that I just hit. And I'd never seen him up close. He kind of looked like my dad's age. He's an older man. And I was like, I only saw him from 60 feet, 6 inches away. That's the only way I knew him. And what he had done is somebody threw the baseball back from the stands. Don Sutton got the ball and brought it over in the dugout. And he told me, he said, I just want you to have this ball. I think you're going to be a great major league player someday. And I wanted you to have this and remember this moment that I think you're going to be really great. And he signed the ball, and he gave it to me. And folks, I can't tell you what impact that meant on me, still to this day. I knew him from 60 feet, 6 inches away, and I hated him. Now I want to hug him. And it was just the most unbelievable thing that he had done for me. That act of mentorship for me showed so many signs of leadership. It showed humility. It showed graciousness. And I'll tell you what, I've never experienced anything like that where it was so impactful in such a short amount of time. So remember, when you're mentoring people, it can make the most unbelievable difference in the world to them, okay? Because it certainly did for me. And part of that dialed into that is passion, right? Isn't it? Passion, another word for passion is love, which is the strongest thing in the world. I really do believe that. And don't we all want to get to a point of fulfillment in our lives too? At some point, we want to be fulfilled in our lives. And, you know, some people think that fulfillment is all about feeling good or being happy all the time. But really, it isn't, because fulfillment can happen when times are really tough and uncomfortable. You know, a lot of people said they felt most fulfilled when life was a struggle, when they had the least. They were doing something that was important to them, things that claimed their passion and commitment. There, in the midst of scarcity, life was abundant. Perhaps the simplicity of the time gave them a more clearer picture of what was truly valuable and important to them, right? So I think that's a really important thing. Things like living a life of purpose, or a service, or having a mission in your life, which can be, you know, intense and exhausting and heartbreaking, and at the same time, enormously fulfilling. The paradox being that you could have a sense of inner fulfillment and still deal with an outer struggle at the same time. So anyway, I think another thing when we talk about passion is I've had times in my life where I thought about, wow, that was a strange thing. A journalist came up to me one time, it just blew him off. He came up to me and says, hey, how do you get up for a game? I just laughed at him. Really, look around. There's 50,000 people in here. We're playing against some of the great athletes. I mean, they pay you guys a lot of money. Don't ask me how I get up for a game. I guess my feet hit the floor in the morning, man, and I'm going, right? It's never an issue to see, I got to generate some way to get happy. If the passion's there, it's there. How many people like Final Four? March Madness? Oh, this is basketball country here, isn't it? Larry Bird and all that? Yeah, it's great. So I heard 2 years ago, I'm watching the Final Four, and this basketball player, probably 20 years old, and they asked him, how's it go? Well, you know, we lost the game today because we just didn't have the energy. We had no, dude, you're 20 years old, you're playing in this venue on national TV, and you don't have energy? Look, if there's no passion, there's no energy, there's no capacity. No passion, no energy, no capacity. No capacity to wind something up and finish it. That's because there was no passion in the beginning to get it started. Big hopes and dreams is potential. Big hopes and passion, that's inevitability. Now, I wanted to share with you too about confidence. And I had an issue when I was 23 years old, my second year in the big leagues. I lost my confidence, I really did. I thought I might even lose my career. It was a horrible thing. I couldn't suddenly throw the ball to first base. It was this thing that manifests itself into a throw that I couldn't make to 40 feet away from here to there, something I've done my whole life. Now, you can be honest. Does anybody here remember that? Oh, don't be that profound about it. She's like, oh, yeah. I remember it. I killed a bunch of people behind first base when I was in that year. So anyway, it got to be this horrible thing. I mean, I was getting cards and letters from people all over the country. Gamblers were sending me cards from Las Vegas saying, hey, man, you're messing up our bets. One more errant throw like that, when you come to New York, we're going to put a bullet in your head. I mean, it was bad. I got a card from a 12-year-old girl from Sammamish, Washington. 12 years old. She goes, Mr. Sachs, I'm a softball player. I'm 12 years old. I can make that throw. What's your deal? You know, it was bad. It got to be bad. So I lost my confidence, and I finally figured out what it was. I got it back, and actually, the last day of my dad's life, June 10th, 1983, is when I figured it out. And my dad's the one that gave me the tool to do it, and it's in my book. If you guys can read this, you'll see where it is. That's called marketing. Okay. So anyway, my son, when he was a little boy, lost his confidence, if you can believe that, as well. You know how teachers, well, they'll do ground testing, baseline testing for kids when they're very young. And they did this for, my son was in that testing group when he was about 8, 9 years old. And he come out of his testing, he would be crying and he lost his confidence. He needed more time to test. So the school and his mom and I got together and decided we'll give Johnny more time to test and find out what his issue is. But I actually found out what his issue was and why he lost his confidence when he was playing baseball. He was playing left field in this one particular game. My brother and I were the managers of the team, coaches. And they hit my son a fly ball, and he was back looking for the ball. He saw it right there, and he was waiting for the ball to come down, and he had a beat on it, and the ball comes down, and it goes whoop, and it lands right behind him and sticks there, and it's just sitting there. And he's sitting there staring at the sky, and people in the stands are going, "What's wrong with your kid?" I'm like, "I don't know." They're like, "Get the ball, John." He's like staring at the sky. So they finally get the third out, and he comes in, and he's walking into the dugout, and I'm saying, "Johnny, come over here." I said, "What are you looking at, son?" He said, "Oh, Dad, I saw the fly ball." I said, "Okay, well then what?" He said, "Did you see the C-130 transport plane that flew over that has a payload of 80,000 pounds, takes 7 people to fly that thing, says $8 million for each engine?" My son wanted to be an aviator, okay? Now stay with me. This is getting drawn out a little bit. Just stay with me on this. So when he was 5 years old, he was in a biplane, hooked right there. I want to be a pilot. Not a pilot. He wants to fly jets. He wants to be an aviator. That's what he wanted to do. So what he did was he went on the internet, okay, and he tried to figure out, okay, what do I got to do to be a pilot? How do I do this? And I got to know calculus and geometry and trigonometry and all these things. And so in his little mind, he thought he had to be Albert Einstein to fly a plane. He was thinking, oh, it's just so difficult. I can't do this. So there was one of two things he could do. He could cower down and say, "Nah, I can't do this." Or he could take the other approach and bite it in the face and challenge the issue. And this little boy did this. It was amazing. When he was 8 years old, he made this for me. This is the plaster Paris of a jet. You can see it's pretty good. He made this for me. He says, "Dad, I want to tell you something. I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to quit. I'm going to find ways to do it. I want you to keep this plaster Paris of jet because I want it to be a reminder that I'm never going to stop. I'm going to keep doing it." He says, "I'm not the smartest person in my school. I'm not even the smartest in my class, but I'll find a way to do it." And then years later, when he was in college, he'd be gone for a weekend. Wouldn't see him. And his girlfriend would call up and say, "Mr. Sachs, where's John?" I said, "I haven't seen him." And his buddy would call me up and say, "Mr. Sachs, not to worry. John's at the library. He actually took some money out of his own bank account and hired a tutor, and he wants to turn the A into an A+. He's not satisfied with the A, which he was already getting in school." That's the kind of attitude that he had. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you that my son, actually, let me introduce you to him. That's my son right there. Well, there he is. That's Johnny Sachs right there. He's a cute kid, isn't he? Yeah, that's him. And a couple years later, my son graduated from the top 10% of his class at Embry-Riddle University, which is #1 aeronautical academy. You guys know where that is, down in Prescott, Arizona. And then it was amazing when I was down in Pensacola, walking there and seeing people come out of these Army bases or these Marine bases, saluting my son, people twice his age. They were saluting actually a Marine and my son, who is now a jet pilot, and that's Officer John Sachs right there. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, last year, many times what they'll do to fly the jets, they take a lot of the Air Force people, of course. But my son was one of two Marines in last year's Corps that was selected to fly the F-35. So my son's getting training to fly the F-35. When you lay your head down at night and you put your head to sleep, know one thing, that man right there would give his life for you. He's a wonderful Marine, he's a wonderful person, and he's got no quit in him. And that's what my son's about. So I'm very thankful for him. Yeah. So also, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk a little bit about adaptability, which is a really important subject. I mean, adaptability with the transfer of information today, the dissemination of information. It's really important that we be able to think on our feet and also be prudent about decisions that are long-term, that are on the horizon. I had to do this when I was a member of the Yankees, my last year with the New York Yankees. You see, at the middle part of the season, at the All-Star break, I was hitting just .210, which is not good. That's a bad batting average. And my agent let me know. He calls me up, and my agent's name is Tom Rich, and I call him Richie Rich because that's what he is. And he's a really good agent. He's a lawyer. He never played baseball, but he's an attorney. He's got it going on. And he calls me up and says, "Steve, look, when you come to Chicago, we need to have a conversation about your batting average or lack thereof." And I thought, hey, great, this will be a nice conversation. So I get to Chicago, and Tom's there, and he says, "Okay, Steve, look, I got it figured out. You're hitting .210, not good. You've been in the league 12 years. He said, they're on to you, bro. They're on to you. They know where you're going to hit the ball. He says, they're pitching you outside. You're hitting the ball to the right side. The defense is there. They're catching it. Your batting average is going down. Your team is going down, and so is the opportunity for me to get you another contract. He said, what I suggest that you do is you change the way you hit. I'm like, really? You want me to change the way I hit, Tom? Okay, you just don't change the way you hit. He says, yeah, what I think you should do is get on top of the plate, get a lighter bat, and start pulling the ball, because they'll have to pitch you inside. So challenge the ball in, start pulling the ball, maybe hit a few home runs. You know, your average will go up, and your team will start winning, and so will my opportunity to get you another contract. I said, man, listen to this guy. This dude's never had a bat in his hand in his life. I'm not changed. This guy is absolutely crazy. So I changed the way I hit. I actually did. I changed the way I hit. I thought, you know what? Man, it's not working now. The advice, maybe okay, I'll try it. So I did. I got a lighter bat. Folks, I had one of the best years of my life. All because I was able to soften up that wall that we get in front of us when we're sometimes in our respective fields at a point of prominence. And we don't want to hear that thing. And after the season was over, I sat back and I started thinking about it, and I said, you know, the most expensive thing that I own right now is a closed mind. And if you think it's taxing and expensive on the way to being successful, you need to check out the cost of a big ego. Okay? Now, as a player, I was fortunate to play under two of the greatest managers ever, two Hall of Famers, Tommy Lasorda, Tony La Russa. You guys know who these people are, right? Two different forms in the way they do it, okay? These are two really great managers. They do two things differently than other people, and that's the reason they're in the Hall of Fame. Now, what's the main job for a manager or a leader of a team? They got to get everybody on the same end of the rope. They got to set a platform in the clubhouse that's conducive to winning. They got to make sure that there's harmony and everybody's working well together. Those type of things, yeah, we all know that. That's all fine. But they knew the differences between being a leader and a manager. Now, managers know one thing, is they treat everybody the same, right? Now, the rules are the same, but people aren't. And that's the other thing they knew. Leaders don't treat everybody the same because people are different. They knew which buttons to push, which ones not to, when to back off, when to push it on a little bit, right? And they knew these types of things. But the two things they did differently than everybody else is, number one, they made a connection with the people on that team. Absolutely connected with these people on the team. Knew everything about them. Gained the trust, which was the first thing. Gained their trust. When they gained the trust of the players on that team and it was embedded and laid down in stone, they did the second thing that was really important, that complemented the first, and that was they empowered them. They didn't dictate, they empowered. They wanted to cut loose the entrepreneurial flair of these individuals. That's the great thing. When you cut loose that entrepreneurial flair, the wellspring of ideas just jumps out of people. Isn't that true about American people, the free-thinking people that we are? And that's what he wanted to tap into, because when you cut loose that entrepreneurial spirit, what you're doing is you're challenging them. You're challenging them to raise the bar of expectancy. Folks, when you raise the bar, you lose the losers. But if you lower that bar, you're going to lose the winners. And the bigger problem isn't when you aim too high and miss. Bigger problem is when you aim too low and you actually strike the mark. Now, I want to talk for a second about changes in human behavior, how we can make some of these micro changes, okay? But first, I wanted to tell you, Gallup recently did a poll, said that 70% of the American workforce today is not emotionally engaged at work. 70% not emotionally engaged at work. So what that means is 7 out of 10 people that you hire are working just hard enough not to get fired. That's really not a good, not a good thing. Now, these behavioral changes that we want to change, maybe in ourselves, maybe with our team, how's that going to happen? Because it's not an aha moment, okay? It's not some grandiose event. You're in the brick stacking business now. You're stacking bricks, bricks of positivity, one after the other, slow and steady. You stack enough bricks in a positive nature, you can build yourself a fortress. Drop a penny in the bank of success every day, just a penny, and double the efforts over the course of a month each day. A penny today, 2 cents tomorrow, 4 cents the next day, 8. You get that? You people in finance here, you know where I'm going with this, right? After 30 days of doing that, you will have yourself a fortune. Small conquests over a period of time will change the demeanor levels in people. Confidence starts to soar, and you've built what I like to call an inertia of positivity in all different aspects of your life, not just in the workforce, right? This inertia of positivity and, in your associations of in and out of work, your relationship with your spouse and kids, it all runs together. We know what inertia is, right? We learned that in school, right? Newton gave us the law. Object at rest remains so unless it's started up by some other force. Object in motion remains in motion unless it's interrupted by some unbalanced force. Folks, in the inertia of your life, you are the force. You're not somebody else. I put it on their desk. I thought they were going to do it. Yeah, I sent them an email. Nope, that doesn't count. Oh, I thought this other guy would. No, You are the decision maker and the ultimate arbiter of what's going to happen and where this whole thing is going with you. As a business coach, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit miffed about the levels of acceptance I see with some people, because our lives aren't static. They're moving all the time, man. If you're not growing, you're slowing. If it's not getting bigger, it's definitely getting smaller. Nothing stays in that level in the middle there. That level in the middle is where people go when, the questions aren't as tough, when the light's not as bright, and when the pressure doesn't mount. That level is called mediocrity. And if you go and you stay at that level too long, you're going to get consumed, obviously. As an executive coach, there's a word that comes up. I love coaching with the executives, yeah. Especially when you tell them they got an ugly baby. Ooh, they don't like it. They don't like that stuff, right? If you're coaching executives, you got to be ready to get fired, because eventually they're not going to like it and they're saying, you're fired. Ooh, I guess I'm making a difference, right? So the coach and the executives, though, one thing that comes up, and it usually does most of the time, is the word failure. Folks, I have failed so many times in my life. I can't tell you how many times I've failed. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I actually think that, we should celebrate it. And I'm not talking about when Bob and Mike have a business and it goes down, they're destitute on the street. I simply mean that the word failure and celebrate, maybe they should go side by side with each other. And here's why. Did you realize that more than the lack of knowledge, more than the lack of a clear action plan or a strategy, the biggest obstacle in the way of success for people today is the paralysis caused by the fear of failure. Now, most of us learn early on that failure is bad. It's even shameful. We learn to hide our failures and make excuses for it or ignore it. And what's worse is that we begin to stop taking risks. And we only engage in those activities that have a high probability of success, even to avoid the possibility of failure. So what happens is the field of play becomes smaller and smaller, and the chances become less and less. But it doesn't have to be that way. You see, failure, not only is it critical, it's one of the fastest ways of learning. Ask any toddler. You'd never see a toddler staying up all night reading the How to Walk manual, right? They just get up and flop and crawl around and flop some more and stand up. And statistically, when they're going through this arduous process, there's more bumps and steps, more failures and successes. But it never seems to dampen their enthusiasm, right? They just get up and flop and stand up and do it some more. When have you ever heard a kid say, hey, Mom and Dad, can't wait someday to work my way up to middle management, right? No, they want to be lion tamers and ballerinas and all these great things. I mean, you ever watch a kid for just a couple of minutes? I can't walk, I can't talk, I got stuff all over the place, my hair's all messed up, can't get that darn binky in my mouth. I mean, they can't do anything. But yet it doesn't dampen the enthusiasm. Now, I think it's important to note that everybody's going to go what I like to call the land of failure, right? And just because somebody goes through and messes up at a couple of things does not make them an ultimate disaster. I think it's imperative that people need to push themselves to the edge of that ability or capacity. Sometimes they push too far and they fail. But other times they don't push far enough and they failed because they just missed an unbelievable opportunity to do something really good, to change the world, or to do something fantastic. Folks, we know what the failure feels like, right? Have you guys ever been there with me? Have you ever laid in bed and thought, man, I don't want to mess the team up again. I can't stand this, the self-loathing, the hatred that you have for yourself. I can remember coming off the field getting booed in my own stadium by 60,000 people, booing me, and I swear I was coming off cursing at myself, hating myself, absolutely hating what I was doing, hating it. I just hated myself so bad for what I was messing up with, cursing myself. But in the midst of all that, just remember that failure is not the worst thing. You know what's worse than that? Not ever knowing. Not ever knowing how unbelievable you could be. And if you can take that and get on that pony and kick it and ride right into the teeth of what's possible, even though failure lurks around the corner, but if you love something you're doing, it's absolutely worth it. And that is the part that needs celebrating. That's the celebration part. That's what you must celebrate. Okay? Now, I was teammates with Michael Jordan. Do y'all remember when I was with the Chicago White Sox? Do y'all remember when Michael Jordan tried to play baseball? You guys remember that? He was a great basketball player. Yeah, he was. He could play basketball. Yeah. This and that, boom. This and this, not so much. Nope, he really couldn't do it in baseball. But I'll tell you what, he was such a great guy. Loved being around Michael Jordan. I mean, I got to spend a month with him in spring training. I got to spend another month with him in Birmingham, Alabama. I had to go down there because I had a foot injury, and I had to go down there for some rehab, and Michael was on the team. He bought this big old bus. It was great, man. I was telling people, man, it's cool. Michael Jordan's cool. You know, I just loved it. I actually got to bounce a basketball with him in the locker room. It was fantastic, yeah. I brag about it all the time. And, but just being on the bus with him and watching what he did, I mean, he even told us, he said he was cut from his high school basketball team. Can you believe that? Michael Jordan? You kidding me? Where's that coach now? Probably not doing too good. And, you know, he was, he told us about the times where he had the game-winning shot in the palm of his hand. We remember the Bulls. And he'd shoot and lose, and buzzer go off, and they lose. Michael missed a shot. But he said, had he not gone through those times, he never would have been the icon that he is now. So for him, the road to success went right through the dump. That's what he said. Pretty cool thing. Now, I want to share one quick story with you about a guy, another teammate of mine, and I have to change his name, folks, okay, because this is kind of a saucy story. We're going to say his name is George, all right, George. And George was a guy that was he'd been around a long time. He was a major league all-star. He was a home run hitter. He made lots of money. He also showed up late for work, didn't take batting practice, and threw racial slurs around the clubhouse, and frankly, nobody liked him at all. And on this one particular day, George decided that he was going to do a team meeting. And team meeting in baseball speak means that they're going to lock down the locker room. There's no managers and coaches, and George is going to address the team. And I thought, this will be interesting. So here we are in the locker room. Remember, this is the highest level at this particular profession. These major league players are going to listen to George. And he starts talking. And as he starts talking, I could not believe my eyes. Because what I saw was an absolute open example of sheer defiance against George. He started talking. One guy got up and looked at him right in the face and walked out on him. Next guy got up, looked at him right in the face, so he saw the contact and walked out. And the next guy did, and pretty soon he didn't have anybody to talk to. What they were saying was, look, we know what you did on the field, but frankly, we're not buying the person. We're not listening to what you're saying. And, 2 years later, when I was a member of the Oakland A's, I got a call to the front office. They said, come on up, Steve. We're making a trade. We want to get your opinion on this trade. And they do that a lot. They'll ask a veteran to come up and say, hey, what do you think about this thing, They'll give it some weight. I got up there. There was 3 of my teammates up there already, veteran guys. And this trade actually, ironically, involved George and another guy who was not as talented as George. Things come to fruition, they wound up signing the other guy. George, at the season's end, went home and retired. This gentleman right here that was not as talented signed a 4-year deal for $25 million. Okay, that was a lot of money back then. It is now too. And George went home and retired. Folks, you can actually quantify what it cost in sheer dollars because of the way this guy carried himself, the way he acted. At my house on Sundays, we have family dinner. And I have my beautiful daughter, Lauren. I didn't show you my daughter, Lauren. She's the love of my life, my beautiful daughter, Lauren. And her husband and my little grandson, Ethan John, who's also the love of my life. And then my son and his wife. They come over. We have, Sunday dinner. And, of course, we give thanks and bless the food before we eat. And on this one particular day, there was more people there. There was aunts and uncles, probably 25, 30 people there. It was a nice gathering. And we're all dishes clanging, glasses banging together, and conversation abound. And I look down there at the end of the table, and there's my 1-year-old grandson, Ethan John, cute as ever, got his big blue eyes on me. And he's looking at me amidst all this confusion. And he's looking, and we're making contact, and pretty soon on his own, without provocation, this little boy, he does this. And he knows it's time to say grace. He knows, he can't say it yet because he's too young, but he knows from watching other adults that it's now time to say grace. Folks, do you think maybe that other people might notice your comings and goings? Maybe the words you use, maybe how you treat other people in the workplace? You see, it's really important the way you carry yourself at your place of business. Not only does it affect your team, not only does it affect your company, but most importantly, it follows you everywhere you go. Just ask George. Now, while it's also important, of course, the way we act, it's really important the way we think, isn't it? The way we think. I love this. I love to talk about this because I talk about it in my book a lot. Thinking is where it all starts, right? I get a lot of great inspiration from the philosophical writer in James Allen. He wrote that book called As a Man Thinketh. Has anybody ever heard of this book? Very popular book. Anybody heard of the book As a Man Thinketh? I mean, it's an amazing book. After you get mine, you really got to get this one because it's a great book. And James Allen talks about that in his book because, see, we can't choose our circumstances in life, right? You can't choose your own circumstances, but you can shape them. You can shape almost any circumstance you wish simply by what goes into this computer on your shoulders. How to jettison the bad thoughts and keep in the good. There's a way you can do that in coaching. It's a very important thing. And James Allen talks about that in his book. He says, in the armory of thought, man forges the weapons with which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds himself heavenly mansions of peace and love and strength. And as you sit here this afternoon, folks, you may think that your thoughts are secrets, all of you. But I beg to differ. You see, I don't think your thoughts are secrets at all. Because what you think about the most in your life is going to grow the most. So in turn, your thoughts are going to be crystallized into habits. Those habits will be solidified into a circumstance, one that you're living in, one that you've created, and the one that you will continually evolve every single day by what you think about it. I heard it once said in a political setting, you can choose to lead and create your own circumstances, or you can do nothing, and you can let somebody else fill the vacuum and be objected to their circumstances. Either way, you cannot lead from behind. You've got to be out there in front, right? And Teddy Roosevelt, he said a great thing too. Best thing you can do is the right thing. Next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. Let's watch this video.
เป็นเป็ดแล้วจะบินเป็นคนหูหนวกแล้วจะเล่นไวโอลินเธอจะบ้าเหรอทำไมไม่ไปเรียนวิชาอื่นเสียเวลาคนอื่นเขา
เ
จบไปแล้วอย่างสวยงามนะครับสำหรับผู้เข้าประกวดคนสุดท้ายของเราในวันนี้นะครับและในช่วงต่อไปก็จะเป็นช่วงของครับเรายังเหลือผู้เข้าประกวดอีก1ท่านนะครับในวันนี้เราไปพบกับเธอกันเลยครับ
All right. You guys like the video? Yeah. I love that video because it really personifies the things that we spoke out today. You know, overcoming obstacles, fear of failure, and the importance of change and diversity. That young mind, it was also that person deaf and able to overcome that and play that beautiful music. So it's just a great thing. In closing, folks, I'd like to share with you, in coaching, I like to do a couple of things. Because I believe in gratitude and being gracious, I think it's the #1 leadership quality that people should have. I ask people to do a couple of things sometimes after a session. That is, #1, to write a letter of gratitude to somebody. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's somebody that's in your family, or maybe it's just a close friend. And tell them why you're grateful that they're in your life. Maybe you could scratch it out in your own hand and put it in an envelope and hand it to them. No sales assistance, no email. Just write it out in your own hand and hand it to the person, okay? And the second thing is write 3 things that you're grateful for that happened to you today. And do this for a week, 5 days. I don't know, I ran into my favorite sandwich at the sandwich shop today. Write that down. 6 consecutive green lights on the way to work. Love it, okay? Write 3 things a day. I guarantee you that after a week, you'll start to change a little bit and see how it is to feel that graciousness and the gratitude. It's a really great feeling. So, okay, lastly, what I do is at the start of every year, I like to write a declaration, and I've written my declaration, and I want to share my declaration with you for the next year. Now, if any of you have a declaration you want to share it with me, you can get me, and well, it's not up there now, but you can get me at steve@stevesackspeaks.com. And if you want some feedback, I'd certainly be glad to give it to you. So I want to share with you a declaration that I have for this coming year. So my declaration is that I am personally responsible for my actions. For too long, I have allowed fear and doubt to keep me afraid and at bay. But no more, for my confidence which once wavered has now been restored and my spirit has been unleashed. I alone dictate the path in my life. Many will doubt me, some will test me, but eventually the naysayers will buckle. I no longer will allow circumstances to frame my thoughts or quality of life. Circumstances are rulers of the weak, and positive thought allied fearlessly with a purpose becomes a creative force. I choose to not be a victim because I choose to be free. I realize that I will become as small as my controlling negativity or as great as my dominant aspiration. I will never lay my actions at the doorstep of someone else. I will talk straight with people, even when the conversation is tough. Because in the end, I own my own problems, all of them, right or wrong. I am naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and I'm strong and confident, and I'll figure it out. I will no longer take life as it comes, but attack it and allow my fearless passion to dictate its course. I know that if I love something I'm doing, the risk is always worth the outcome. I'm the ultimate arbiter of my thoughts, the pureness of my character, and the direction of my destiny. In all I do, there are efforts and there are results. And the strength of my effort is the measure of the result. I'm ecstatic about the boundless potential that lies in my skin, and I've started a new beginning. And that starts right now. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here today. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we have a couple minutes. They said we have a couple minutes left for if we have any Q&A, if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to ask, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Initially, you talked about the San Francisco Giants and the Dodgers. Where do the Padres, the A's, and Angels fit in?
Well, we're talking, okay, so really it's about Giants and Dodgers, and we're in our family, and I think a lot of people think that, but as you get closer and you get down towards the coast or get down to San Diego, of course, the Padres, and those teams are becoming more prominent. I think the A's are going to get a new stadium, and they're going to be a more prominent team. I mean, they won 97 games this year with a team with a bunch of retreads on a pitching staff, so those teams are getting better, but for the most part, it's about Giants and Dodgers. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What was going through your head as, a high school baseball player? You've got all these big teams looking at you.
Okay, so the high school I went to was very small because I grew up on a farm outside of Sacramento, and the school I went to had 700 kids in it, pulling from all different parts. And so I heard that I was going to get drafted, in a high draft choice, and I wasn't. I was drafted in the 9th round. I think part of it because they were maybe questioning the level of competition that I was facing in high school, whatever it may be. But I don't know. I just tried to go out and have fun. I never played the game because I thought I could make money at it, or I never played the game for any other reason. I never worked. I never felt I had work at it. I just played because I loved it. And my brother and I, playing on that farm, we played against a pump house. We had our own water well, and we had a pump house over the water well, and my brother and I used it as a backstop with a tennis ball, and we'd pitch against each other all day long. My brother and I played all the time. I got to tell you guys a quick story, since we're doing the Q&A thing right now. My mom, God rest her soul, my mom was the greatest woman ever. Beautiful Italian woman. My mom was the best. She was the best everything. She was the best mother. She was the best cook. She was the best wife. She was the best. And on the day that I got drafted, for some reason, my brother wasn't drafted. We couldn't figure it out. He was 2 years ahead of me in college, setting records up and down the state. We couldn't figure out why my brother wasn't drafted. So I got drafted in the 9th round by the Dodgers, and they came to the house to sign me. And I'll tell you what, my Italian mother lit into this scout. She said, why didn't you take David? He's better than Steven. What's wrong with you? Do you ever see him hit? Yeah, what's wrong with you guys? She turned this guy into one of the Fuller Brushmen, like, I'm sorry, Mrs. Sachs, we really hadn't seen David that much. And this big, strong scout. Yeah, my mom reduced him pretty good. So anyway, I signed my contract. I'm in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. That's where I started my career in rookie ball. And I was there the day after I signed my contract, 6 a.m. I had a flight that morning on Air Canada to go up to Canada. So I'm there. 2 days later, there's a knock at the door. I open the door, and it's my brother with his suitcases packed full. And I said, what in the world are you doing here? He said, well, Mom got on that scout so bad after you left that she forced the guy to take my brother to a tryout camp in Santa Rosa. And my brother impressed the hell out of this guy right off the bat, signed my brother to a contract. My brother wound up playing for 15 years professional baseball, all right? So I want to ask you, who's the real scout around here? Was it my mom or, Yeah, my mom knew. She knew all that stuff. Oh yeah, she was the greatest. Anybody else? Oh yes, ma'am.
Speaking of parents, what advice would you give parents of a child with a big dream like yours?
That's a great question, ma'am. And I would say that let them dream even bigger if they want. Dream as big as you want. Follow your heart. I believe in following your heart. I think that's the greatest thing. And sometimes parents mean so well when they have a kid that's a talented young man or young woman or young lady, and they want to help so much. They want to give them so much coaching, and I need a professional coach, and I need to get her a professional gymnast, and I need him to get a professional pitching. Look, I think it's overdone. I mean, it's well-intentioned, but kids aren't going to retain that. And if they don't turn out to be some great thing, they're going to think they let you down. You know what advice I'd give parents? Here's advice I give parents about kids that are growing up that aspire to be athletes or whatever. Here's what I would do. This is what I did for my kid. Take them to practice, drop them off at practice, and pick them up. And when you're sitting around the dinner table after practice, ask them if they had a good time. That's it. That's all you should do. And you know, that stuff all takes care of itself. I mean, it'll find its way. If they love it, they'll find it, But trying to push it too much, I think, it should come from them, actually. But it's well-intentioned, but I just think they should dream as big as they want to dream, man. I didn't go to college. I had a scholarship to Arizona University, and I didn't take it because I wanted to roll the dice and try to get into baseball as fast as I could. And it turned out to be the right thing, but, lots of times it doesn't. And so that's why I say if kids have an opportunity to go to college, it's up to the kid. But I would advise them to go to college, but you can't really make them go, okay? That was my situation. Yes, sir.
Yes, can you share a little bit more on, baseball, there's people who fail 7 out of 10 times and they're in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir.
How do you use that in your life?
It's a good point. His point is, to become a 300 hitter in baseball, which is a ticket to the Hall of Fame, that means you fail 7 of 10 times, right? You get 3 base hits out of 10, that's a 300 average. So you fail the other 7. And that's kind of like a moniker for guys that play baseball. We know that it's really tough. Baseball is the most skilled sport without a question of all the sports. They give you a bat that's round and a ball that's a sphere, and they tell you to hit it square. And then when you do, they got some jerk out there, 9 guys with a glove trying to get you out. Okay, so play, and the ball's dipsy-doing. It's going this way, that way, fast, slow. It's on a yo-yo and whatever it does. And it's hard to hit that thing sometimes. But hitting is the hardest thing to do in sports. And so, it's a great thing. If you can fail that many times and get up and still try it, like I mentioned in my presentation, that's what's really got to be celebrated for people. Okay? Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you for that question. Question was when I had an issue throwing to first base, and so I know some of you remember that. It wasn't a mental block at all. People say, "What was that mental block you had?" It wasn't a mental block at all. It was a case of lack of confidence, and that confidence really manifested itself into letting that ball go right there. And when it was letting it go right there is when I would tighten it up, and ball was going everywhere. People was like, "What the heck is wrong with him?" People thought I was on drugs, man. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" And it was just a lack of confidence. And like I said, I figured that thing out on the last day my dad was alive. He helped me with it. My dad gave me the tool to get over that thing. And actually, when I got over that thing, I don't like to talk about my accolades or whatever, but when I went to the American League, I was the #1 fielder in the American League in my position. From going to the worst because of that issue I had to going to the top. And it can happen. I experienced it, and man, you can do anything with confidence. I really believe that, and that's what it was, just a loss of confidence. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about how Moneyball, the analytics of baseball,
Okay. Question is, can you talk a little about Moneyball? Are you familiar with Moneyball, the book Moneyball, the movie, and analytics and how analytics affects baseball today? Listen, I think you got to be crazy not to use some of the numbers, but I think it's way overdone. I think the shift is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. They say, when it's, they make the shift and they hit the ball in the shift, they make the play. Wow, look at the shift works. Yeah, but they don't tell you the 15 other times where we hit a 27 hopper through the right side that goes through for a base hit where the second baseman would normally have been. So I think analytics is way overdone. I do. I think it's good to use some of it. We used some when I played, but to say that it just dominates it now. And you see, these managers today are now going to be 30-something to 40-something years old, no baseball acumen. They're going to be implementers. They're going to go and collaborate with the front office on the numbers on who to play, who to pitch, and that's what a manager is going to do today. It's not gut check time. It's not, baseball experiences on what happened in the past, and they're not going to pay these guys any money. They're going to pay them like a fourth of the price of a real manager, and hire these implementers in the dugout. Pretty soon it's going to go to a computer and just go by the numbers. That's kind of where it's going right now. It's too bad. I don't like it. I like the old school. I like running into the catcher. I got scars on my legs from guys putting their spikes in me and getting stitched up and all that. I know it hurts sometimes, but I like the action, man. I like that stuff. Today, you can't touch anybody. Baseball's on therapy. I mean, I think what we're seeing is we're seeing the wimpification of the American sportsman. Look at it. I mean, football, you tackle the quarterback, they throw the flag. You landed on him. Geez, what am I supposed to do? You know, give him a little soft place to land. The guy's running down the sideline. You can't go up there and stick your shoulder in him. You got to negotiate him out of bounds today, right? That's the way it is. It's a wimped out sports, man. I don't like it. I like it the way it used to be. I got one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Did you only play baseball or were you a multi-sport guy?
I liked all the sports, but baseball is where it is. And as a matter of fact, my high school coach, they didn't let me play football, and they didn't let me play basketball because they said if something happens to you, because I was getting scouted when I was like 16 years old. So they thought that this was going to happen for me, and unfortunately it happened. It did, but so I wasn't, even the coaches at school wouldn't let me play. But, you know, I like the other sports. I just like baseball probably more. That's it. So one more question? Yes, sir. If I was commissioner of baseball, what would I do? Oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing I'd do is I'd soften up the baseballs because they're all juiced. You see the home runs they're hitting today, right? There are more home runs hit now than ever because the baseballs are hard as a rock. So when they hit them, they go out. So I would get more of a level playing field for that. And I would take out all this notion that they're trying to get. They're trying to get all these young people into the ballpark. And so what they're doing is we've seen attendance go down the last 2 years in a row. So they've got all these, I just think they're overdoing it too much. You know, they're trying to speed up the game so much. Well, you know, all there is home runs and strikeouts. How's that going to speed up the game? You don't see anybody, you know, stealing bases or doing anything like that anymore. It's either a home run or a strikeout. So I would put more emphasis on the way baseball used to be. You know, maybe I'm old school, but I like the game the way it used to be. Now it's just, I don't know. I still love the game, but it's not like it used to be. So anyway, with that, I'll bow out. My time is up. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you.